From the News Channel 5 network, this is Medical Mondays.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Medical Monday, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Carrie Sharp. It is time to take your questions and calls about hearing loss tonight. Dr. David Gnewikow is joining us once again from Advanced Hearing Solutions in Mount Juliet. Dr. Gnewikow, thank you so much for being here.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know that we will get calls and questions tonight. The number will be on the screen in just a few minutes. Please feel free to jump on the line right away, and we will get right to your questions. But I'm going to ask a few questions first.
Go right ahead.
You're in Mount Juliet, have a cute little office. Tell folks about it.
Okay, so I am an audiologist. My practice is Advanced Hearing Solutions. We've been in Mount Juliet for almost 12 years. It'll be 12 years in April. We opened in 2007. And
Nice.
So my office is located right on North Mount Juliet Road, about a half a mile from the interstate. So we have a pretty convenient location for folks coming from lots of different directions. I will say the traffic in Mount Juliet is busier than it used to be, but we're still pretty easy to get in and out of our office. So we specialize in taking care of people with hearing problems, primarily work with adults. We do a lot with hearing aids, and it's just a pleasure to do what I do.
And you mostly work with adults, as you said. When they come in, when they make the call, tell me about how the process unfolds.
Sure. So hopefully we're going to talk to some folks tonight that need some help with hearing, but when people call our office, the first thing we do for somebody is we offer a free initial evaluation. And as I've said before on this show, and I say to patients every day, you know, I look at that initial evaluation as your opportunity to sort of interview us, find out if we're the right fit for what you need in terms of hearing, and really it is a teaching visit. You know, I really look at what I do as I am teaching my patients and their families about hearing loss, about what to expect if they need help. We talk about all types of questions about hearing aids and technology. I'm sure we'll talk about some of that stuff tonight. But I spend an hour and a half with folks at that initial visit, both doing a hearing test and understand their hearing, but really sort of listening to what brings them to that visit. And so we do that. There's no obligation, there's no tricks, there's no high pressure. I just want people to know how we can help them, and then they can decide if we're the right fit for them.
And I like you said, you do a lot of teaching. That's used to be what you did all the time.
That's right. So I spent 7 years on faculty at Vanderbilt and taught students in the medical school, and there are certainly parts of that part of my life I don't miss, but I really enjoy teaching, and I really enjoyed spending time with students. And that's what I do every day in clinic too, is teach people how we can help them. But I really want people to understand why they're experiencing some of the issues that they are. You know, we always get the jokes about, well, my wife hears what she wants to hear.
Right.
My husband has selective hearing. And although I really appreciate a good hearing joke, most of that stuff I can explain. You know, I can explain why sometimes he can hear you and other times he can't. Or I can explain why, you know, some TV shows are harder to understand than others. It's all about understanding the science of hearing, which also is what helps us be able to help those people do better in those situations.
Well, help me understand the science of hearing, how it works and how it doesn't work. Okay,
so let's start. I look at hearing and how we understand. So let's talk about understanding more than hearing.
Okay.
You know, I think those are two different terms, and it's an important differentiation. You know, hearing is about, I heard a beep and I raised my hand. And not that, you know, as an audiologist I don't appreciate that. Understanding is about a conversation.
True.
Understanding is about being able to communicate with people, or be able to do your job, or be able to interact with the people that you love. So when I talk about hearing, I really like to talk about understanding. Understanding is basically a math problem. So hearing loss tends to take away information. I just had this conversation with actually a former professor at Vanderbilt. I saw him a few hours ago. He had a relatively mild hearing loss, and so we had the conversation to say, okay, your hearing loss is causing you to miss 30% of what people say. Now, people say 30%, that's a lot, but our brains sort of help us fill in the blank. So if I miss the first syllable of a word, or the second syllable of a word, or the third word in a sentence, a lot of times my brain can sort of figure out what somebody
Sure.
says. And so that's what we call using the context to help us figure out. So if we happen to miss, let's just say 30% like this gentleman, although I won't say there aren't times where he has to ask people to repeat, overall, he's not too bad in a one-on-one conversation. He's not too bad sitting across the table from his wife or watching me on News Channel 5. He's going to do pretty well with those type of situations. His struggle is when there is more information missing. So I go back to my math problem. He's missing 30% because of his hearing, and then he's in a noisy restaurant. And that noise takes away 20% of what he hears, and his hearing loss takes away 30%. Now he's guessing at every other word. Or his hearing loss takes away 30%, and his wife has a very soft voice. That takes away another 20%. Or hearing loss plus mumbler, or hearing loss plus I'm trying to listen to somebody in the next room. And so it all boils down. I can explain hearing loss with that math problem pretty well, and that I think helps people understand, okay, well, maybe when I'm in the next room, my husband really doesn't hear me over the TV. I keep saying husband. I should say wife. I should blame it on the ladies.
That's okay. Keep it
I should blame it on the ladies sometimes. But a lot of that is really situational. I could go on and on forever, so we probably have to take a break eventually. But the room has a lot to do with it. The acoustics of the environment. Big open rooms are harder to understand a television, or big open rooms are harder to understand. I've patients that go to like a Catholic church and they say, you know, it's big and nice and beautiful and ornate, but I really struggle to hear because of the acoustics in that environment. So much to it. I could go on and on, but that's really what we try to teach people when they come into our offices. Let us talk about the situations that are giving you trouble. Let me explain why they are giving you trouble, and then let's talk about some potential solutions.
And what causes hearing loss? I imagine it loud noises over and over again, but other things as well.
So actually, the #1 cause of hearing loss is genetics.
Really?
So just like some of us have genetics for heart conditions, or some of us have genetics for having to wear glasses at an early age, a lot of hearing loss is just genetics. So if you're listening to this program and mom and dad had a hearing problem, or you got 2 siblings that are starting to have that, you know, I'm not saying that it's a one-to-one relationship, but in general, genetics is a very big factor. I have seen patients who have never been exposed to loud noise, who have done everything right in their lives to protect their hearing, yet they still have a hearing loss because of that genetics. #2 is noise, and that's, I think, what a lot of people think is, well, I've never really been around a lot of loud noise. Loud noise is probably the #2 factor there.
Really? Yeah. Let's go right to the lines. We have Jeff on the line this evening. Hi, Jeff. What's your question tonight?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
I am totally deaf in the left ear, but extreme loud noises are very painful, and people just don't understand that. And I was wondering if I could explain it to them, or could you explain it so that I might?
Absolutely, Jeff. So let me ask you a quick question, and then we'll get you to just listen. When you say loud noises bother you, does it bother you in the left ear?
And yes, in the left ear, the deaf ear.
Okay. So yeah, I think I can help explain that. A lot of times people think of hearing loss as, okay, I can't hear soft sounds, so we can turn it up as loud as we want. That's not what most hearing loss is. Most hearing loss is, I can't hear soft sounds, but loud sounds are still loud. So if something is, I'm just going to use a number, 100 decibels is a marginally uncomfortable to uncomfortable sound for most people. You probably can hear 100 decibel sound even in that ear that has a very severe hearing loss if it's not completely deaf. So 100 decibels is uncomfortable, but yet 80 decibels you might not be able to hear at all. And so a lot of people don't understand that. It's funny, I test patients' hearing all the time, and I've got all kinds of crazy equipment, and you know, if they don't hear a signal, you turn it up, and we do that slowly. And I can literally go from, I'll just use a number, from 95 decibels and they can't hear the tone, and I turn it to 100, and they'll wince at the volume being too loud. So just because there is a hearing loss doesn't mean that loud sounds don't still affect people. Does that make sense?
Well, I just want to follow up on a question. How can you have such, if you're, you know, again, that 5-point margin, 5 decibel margin, why would it go from nothing to, whoa, that hurts?
That's right. So basically we're hitting sort of the elastic limits of the physical system of the ear. So the way we can tell, you know, okay, I heard it at, let's just say 40 decibels or 50 decibels. That's that those nerve endings are working and they're firing. But with a severe hearing loss, the inner ear is not working. So those nerve endings that would pick up the signal at a normal hearing level of 15 or 20 decibels, I've got to keep turning it up and keep turning it up and keep turning it up because there's so much damage to those nerve endings. When we reach a certain level, it's almost like a physical stimulation rather than a nerve stimulation, and you say, wow, that was really uncomfortable. So they went from hearing nothing because of the absence of those nerve endings that pick up the sound to an uncomfortable kind of physical presentation.
Well, Jeff, hopefully that helped you out. Great question. Thank you. I learned something too there. Well, let's talk about when somebody does get a hearing aid, how that helps restore their hearing. And I don't know if restore is the right word.
Sure. So restore, definitely improve. What we don't do, and what I wish I could do and had the magic button, is to say, okay, for Jeff, who has this very severe hearing loss or possibly complete deafness in one ear, you know, if you just ate the right vegetables and did the right exercise, could we repair the damage in his inner ear that's not working right? And the answer to that, at least with everything we know with current science, is no. I mean, there is not a surgery, there is not a medication, there is not a medical treatment with what we call sensory neural hearing loss, which is what most people experience. That was what I was just describing about the nerve loss. There's not a medical procedure that can fix the damage and restore that. So what we do, as you ask with hearing aids, is about giving back as much information as possible. And so I'll go back to my math problem that we talked about a few minutes ago. If somebody has a 50% hearing loss, I can't restore that 100%, so I can't necessarily say, oh yeah, well, we just click this button and I program my computer and now you can hear 100% like you could when you were 16. But a lot of times if somebody has a 50% hearing loss, we can give them back 85, 90%. You know, we can bring them back up to that level. And so it's really about restoring sound to the remainder of the ear that's still working, to those nerve endings that are still working, restoring those sound to levels that the nerves can use them and that the brain can use them. And that's really what it all comes down to, is how much information can we give back to make conversations easier, to make interactions easier. Great.
We're going to talk about the fitting of those hearing aids and the testing for them and everything else when we come back.
Okay.
Hopefully more of your phone calls as well. 615-737+ is the number to call. We'll get those calls lined up. Jeff, thanks for giving us our great start this evening. We'll be right back.